Sissy, you file your amendments, you do your hand-to-hand amendment combat. Like it is a necessary thing. It is why an opposition exists.
You're like my chairwoman. May I approach the well?
Your brain is so broken, I just have to say. But
Yeah, I know. This is what you get when we're filming a podcast at 10 o'clock.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Twinning with Anna and Ida. I'm your co-host, Ida Eskamani,
And I'm Anna Viescamani.
and we are here recording this late on a Monday night. I am in Orlando, Florida. Anna is in Tallahassee. We usually try to record these episodes over the weekend, but this weekend has been a very intense one. Many of us woke up to the news that America and Israel have bombed and attacked Iran. Of course, that has led to a ripple effect across the world of the Iranian government launching missiles on U.S. bases as well as resorts and airports and all these pieces around the world. And some folks might not know that Anna and I are Iranian American. Most of our family lives in Iran. Our family has been impacted by the internet blackout and all these different pieces. And so it's been just a very heavy time. Anna, how are you? How are you holding it? How are you feeling?
Same for sure. There's a lot of dynamics for the diaspora. I'm sure a lot of folks have seen this online as well. For folks who don't know, there have been protests happening in Iran for several months now in opposition to the regime. And of course, it's not the first time that everyday Iranians have braved the streets to call out their government and to demand something new and something different. And it doesn't it shouldn't have to be said, but I think it's worth saying that the Islamic Republic of Iran is a brutal and repressive regime, and no one should be defending this government. For 47 years, it's imprisoned, tortured, executed, silenced, and massacred its own people. And we saw that most recently with reports of tens and thousands of Iranians that were killed in the streets by their own government. And in those protests, there were calls for help. There were calls for regime change. And of course, there was a lot of opinions across the world about this. And President Trump told protesters to keep going and help was on the way. And then we woke up to this news on Saturday morning. And I mentioned the diaspora is everywhere on this because there are people celebrating across the country and across the world for this act of military intervention by the United States and Israel, as there are those that are protesting against it. And for so many Iranians, and in our case, Iranian Americans, it's overwhelming. It is overwhelming. And it's so hard because I maintain my not just anti-war position, but also the need for congressional oversight. I feel like that's a bare minimum at this point. But it's been hard to also, of course, grapple that with the realities of this situation alongside where the diaspora is, because the diaspora is overwhelmingly celebrating this. And, we see in our own communities. But I think it speaks to how our family history contributes to this, right, Ida? And for many in the diaspora, it's a moment layered with hope, fear, and uncertainty, and probably more uncertainty than ever. But I have been thinking about, and this is hard to talk about, but I've been thinking about if mom was still here, like what she would say, because I feel like she would be really celebrating too. and and that's like, it's a hard thing to process because I just, I also see the images of you know, people's lives being uprooted, but I've also heard the testimonies of Iranians in Iran saying that it's worth it. I mean, you have the girls' school that was striked, and more than 100 people killed there, and of course misinformation around that just everywhere. But I think for me, it's so important to understand like the history of all of this and also the modern history of U.S. intervention, but also, of course, realizing just the dynamics at play here and the different foreign influences and different agendas. But I do try to, you know, think about the everyday people, think about our family roots, and of course the collective trauma that a lot of Iranians hold that, I think for many is a freeing moment to know that Ayatollah Khamenei is dead.
The videos coming out of Iranians coming to the streets despite the threat of foreign bombs falling on them and being gunned down by their own government, celebrating this man's death, um, is incredible,
It's like
right?
exuberant joy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
truly.
I mean, it's as an Iranian American, I mean, it does give you to see people that have suffered so much to have this moment of joy is incredible. And then at the same exact time, what we know, and also what Iranians in Iran know, is that foreign intervention has its own agenda. The United States and Israel are not looking out for their safety. They've got their own agenda. I'm certainly old enough to remember the Iraq War. And to your point, I mean, I know we talked about how our first club in high school was the Gay Straight Alliance. Our first club in college was the Campus Peace Action. Like
Yeah,
we
that's
have
true.
always like I am always gonna be on the side of uh
Meeting at the, UCF gazebo back in the
exactly,
day.
exactly, under that gazebo, exactly. And that group, if I recall, really came out of response to the Iraq War. And of course, I come out of punk music that was rooted in anti-Iraq war. I mean, I can't help but see the similarities around, this faux accusation of weapons of mass destruction. When 6 months ago, the Trump administration said they eliminated all of Iran's nuclear capabilities, and yet there's a threat of nuclear capabilities. Like as you noted, Iranians in Iran and the diaspora have called for some sort of help. But I will also note that the Iranians have been abandoned by the global community for a long time, and there are a
Yeah.
lot of ways to help that are not dropping bombs on residential communities and hospitals and girls' schools and all these things. And I think part of the challenge here, in many ways, it does not fall neatly into like a left or right spectrum, but also in many ways, there's a clear piece around like humanity versus tribalism, intervention versus not, and and caring for civilians versus indiscriminate destruction. There's just such this mixture of just terrifying fear. There's moments today where I felt like I was living a waking nightmare, when you see the different photos coming out and the inability to talk to her family, and also just knowing again that there's very few people in power actually looking out for the future of Iranians and the life of Iranians. And that is just really, really gut wrenching to know.
Yeah, I mean, loving the country of Iran has always meant grieving what the Islam Republic has done to it, and I really appreciate your point around, like, people feeling neglected, 'cause I've seen that commentary a lot too, with a lot of folks mad that, so many of the activist pages were quiet about the protests in Iran and the massacres that took place following it, and yet, obviously have a lot of thoughts and opinions about this. But ultimately, we need answers, and I have done so many interviews throughout the day today, and it's challenging because again, I feel like I sit in these like dualities of a human, of like just a human who cares about peace and cares about the security of every person. As Iranian American, we've inherited this not just experiences but trauma from our parents too, right? Like our mom and dad both left Iran at different times, never went back. Our mom never got to see her sisters when she passed away, and it was a reminder of how government can separate families or bring families together. And that always stuck out to me as a kid, and just realizing that, because we were working class, even phone calls were so rare. And I remember
Yeah, we couldn't even
when
afford to call our family. Like, literally could not afford to call them, to talk to them.
right. Exactly. And when they did, it was always a decision of who's going to pay for the call. So am I going to call or are they going to call? And then that call would have to be like 3 minutes. Like it was just
Yep.
like such a short phone call. And then when we eventually got, you know, dial up internet with the little AOL CDs, whatever.
They were net zero. It was net zero. It was the
Right.
free 10-hour internet from Kmart, and our mom would just pick up 10 of them, and we just had free internet 10 hours at a time. And
Right.
when our mom was, I think I know what you're going to say, when our mom was finally able to get the first email she sent was to our cousins in Iran.
Well, and I remember that email account because it was called Mommy with Three. And yeah, it was just such a big deal that she could actually like talk to a family without waiting 3 weeks to get a letter back. And you just and I remember the stories she would tell about how, the regime ruined Iran and um the freedom she once had that she didn't have. Um i at the end of the day, those in Iran are the ones to decide the future of Iran. issue shaped by them, not dictated by any repressive government or engineered through foreign intervention. And we need to continue to lift up the voices of those who are in Iran, protect civilians across the world and region who have nothing to do with this. And of course, do what we can to maintain the safety of American service members. And we already have reports of service members losing their lives in this moment. So I wish I had a crystal ball. I can't tell you, Ida. Oh, actually, you probably have the same thing. Just the number of people who've texted me, not having a chance to even text them back yet. This is going to continue to be, I think, just all encompassing for many of us.
Part of it is you as a lawmaker, you can't go on pause. You've got to do everything. Where I was able to clear out my entire calendar on Saturday and just sit by the TV all day and send you texts all day of just everything I was seeing online and just compulsively checking the same accounts. And I have to tell you, it's been so challenging in the sense of finding accurate information. So there's a couple accounts that I sort of trust and are verified. But with the amount of misinformation online with its own agenda, and then also not being able to communicate consistently with our loved ones, it's just, you just find yourself glued to your phone, glued to the news, trying to get any information you can for some sort of sense of control. That is not real, but it's just something you try to hold on to. I keep thinking about the stress I feel, and I'm so safe. I'm not
right.
there.
We're so privileged. Right.
Yeah. And so I really hold that. But I have been, this is not a traditional grift of the week, but I've been so livid about the bets on Polymarket about will America bomb Iran, and these essentially insider trading
tell
happening.
People what Polymarket is. I don't think everyone knows what Polymarket is. You're the one who told me about it, because I didn't even know what it was, so you told me.
Oh, Polymarket and Kalshi are these like prediction markets. I didn't know if we could bleep on this pod because I was going to cuss, but they're these quote prediction markets.
You don't have to bleep, okay? You can just say what you got to say.
They're these prediction markets, and they are essentially undercutting all gambling laws because they claim they're not gambling, but they're these websites that you can bet on really anything ever, including sports and things like that. But people have been using it to bet on world events, and there was essentially evidence of these of folks betting on a war with Iran, but they were the accounts that were recently made, attached to different like Trump administration MAGA things, and made a shit ton of money on the war on this war happening on the day. And it's very fishy. It's very suspicious. And
it should be illegal.
It should be illegal. It should be regulated. And of course, like Donald Trump's son is on the board of these organizations. Like there's so much there's so much grift. We have all this money for wars, and yet we somehow can't afford healthcare in this country. And then adding to it, of course, with the Epstein files, and like, I don't care how much this man tries to distract from it, this is coming to roost, hun. And so that's just facts.
So fortunately, we can absolutely do everything at once, and I think we're models of that, because we will fight for
freedom in Iran, and we will hold these awful people accountable.
Yeah, these pedophiles accountable. 100%.
Pedophiles accountable. Sadly, there's so much profiteering in war and in destruction. The Kalshi Polymarket goons, y'all are my coach of the week. Don't bet on people's lives like this.
Well, they need to be banned because it is gambling, despite trying to pretend like it's not. And it's a whole larger conversation about online gambling and the lack of regulations in that ecosystem, and the abuse and the addiction, and in this case, the loophole that is created, where you can literally bet on like life and death situations. I was gonna say it's a grift, but it's also super dystopian, and it's like the epitome of when people think of late stage capitalism, right? Like this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
So no, I appreciate you uplifting that, and I don't. Obviously, we could talk about this for hours, but the goal of this podcast is to also uplift what's happening in your local government.
Speaking of dystopian.
Right. Yeah, good segue. But I'm only assuming that everyone's social media feeds is like filled with information about Iran and the national stage. We want to make sure that we're filling in the gap in your news feed around local issues and state government. And so we are now in what should be the last 2 weeks of legislative session. doesn't look like that. I know, Ida, you were watching the appropriation chair in the Senate, Senator Ed Hooper's press avail. What did you learn from watching that press avail?
Well, I love to suffer. So in between watching Sky News and skimming through every single video and photo I can find of Iran, I was also watching the Florida legislature today in between calls and work things. And part of it is I just like to keep an eye on you, Anna. Just like love and solidarity. But I did catch Senator Hooper's press avail, which he essentially did a hard allusion to, like, we might not finish session on time. And he actually noted the special session on redistricting in April, noting like, well, we could finish the budget in April. So to your point, technically the budget is supposed to be wrapped in session, supposed to be done on March 13th, but it increasingly seems like that's not the case.
Today, the Rules Committee, and so typically the Rules Committee is known for putting together the special order calendar, which is your agenda for the House or Senate floor.
Not super special. I think the name is a little deceiving.
It's true. But the Rules Committee can also obviously do other issues. And today they did a rule change. We have House rules and Senate rules that govern the body. And we actually have a prohibition on fundraising when we're in legislative session. I know we've talked about it before, but basically it says that when you're in session, you can't fundraise. And it's a restriction unique to the Florida House because the Florida Senate has something similar, except if they're pre-scheduled events that get caught up in the middle of a special or regular session. So long story short, today the House basically changed the rules to match what the Senate does, which is another indication that we're not going to end on time because someone has a big fundraiser planned and they don't want to cancel it.
Always in these last few weeks, there's a lot of shenanigans that happen because folks are counting on people being burnt out, tired, not paying attention, just wanting to finish and letting things slide by. And so this is also the time to be hyper vigilant around the different things that are coming through the chambers. And of course, even today, there were a lot of really consequential things that went through. I was watching the union busting hearing. There's a massive anti-union bill that I know you've been on the front line of fighting. Medicaid work requirements as well. The budget piece around the funding for AIDS medication. I know that
ADAP,
the House,
yep.
ADAP, yeah, I know that the House and Senate are trying to put it in the budget, but funding is already, as of March, folks have lost funding for essential
medicine,
life-saving medicine. Yeah. And of course the tax package too, which I know this podcast is probably one of the only few to talk about the tax package.
We love doing it. Yeah,
we do. But there was big news today where the Senate has essentially rejected Trump's tax cuts.
Well, the Senate basically copied us and they co-signed our House bill, like you said, to not sign on to these excessive tax breaks for corporations to make sure Florida's not going to lose billions in dollars in corporate tax breaks.
Which is a huge win and a huge testament to specifically, I will have to say your leadership, Anna, because you've really been, your 8 years in the Florida House, you have set a new tone of what it means to look at the tax package and to hold corporations accountable. And that legacy, I think, is going to continue, whether the Chamber of Commerce likes it or not. But a huge win if we secure this.
You always want to have the open dialogue. So I'm a big believer in that. And I think it makes you a stronger advocate when you hear all the sides.
I have been listening to so many news outlets I don't typically listen to because I think it's important that we know what they're saying. So we are on point. Like, I want to know. So I've been listening to the Wall Street Journal a lot.
I will say, I actually like reading the Wall Street Journal. I think they have really good, like, straight news. I think their editorial can get very more conservative, but if you just like subscribe and read like their straight news, I mean, they've uncovered a lot of Trump stuff recently. Like, they're the ones getting all the leaked memos.
This is true. I just can't forgive them for what they did to my girl Lena Khan. But everything you're saying is correct. I just,
But I feel like that was the opinion section more than like the straight writers. But
I think you're right. Also, just the history, Milton Friedman. These are conversations for another day.
These are other podcast episodes. Other podcast episodes.
Yeah, there would be me at 10:25 p.m. ranting about Milton Friedman, so it's
Yeah.
probably time to wrap this show up.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I did want to just tackle, if I may, like we talked about special order
You
calendars a little
mentioned the
bit.
special order. Could you tell people first what that term is? Like just what it actually means? Because I remember when I first was a legislative aide and somebody told me the special order was coming, I was really confused. I thought we were ordering food. Like I was really excited until I saw the email. So could you explain to
Yeah.
folks too just what that is?
Yeah, for sure. It's basically just a fancy term for your floor agenda, for the bills that are scheduled to be on the House floor. So as a reminder, just because you file a bill doesn't mean it ever gets a hearing. And just because your bill is heard doesn't mean it ever goes to the floor. And just because your bill goes to the floor doesn't mean it passes. And so you have many barriers in your way to get to this finish line. And so
That
with
was
that
not
said,
the most that was not the most depressing thing we've talked about today, but I just want to note how depressing that is. But please go on.
well, so is the process, so is life. But you still got to do it. You still got to buck up and navigate it. And I've been doing that for 8 years now, and proud of it because it does require a lot of grit and grace to make it work. But when the special order calendar comes out, sometimes you get 2 calendars at the same time. Sometimes you just get one. I'm holding in my hands 3 different calendars for 3 different days on the House floor. So in totality, there's going to be at least 150 bills, I would say, that I'm holding right now. And so we go through it. Sometimes we skip around, doesn't always, take place in order they're presented. But for the most part, what I'll do is, I love to have a hard copy of the SO calendar. That I don't have hard copies of every bill because I obviously am millennial, so I use a lot on my computer. Though I will say there are some bills, the really heavy ones, I like to print and just annotate and stuff myself. But with that said, I will go through this list of bills and I will highlight bills of concern.
I see a lot highlighted there.
Yeah, I know. Actually, I think the worst one is probably Thursday's special order calendar. But it is interesting because I ended up having to use 2 different colors. Not to be a nerd on this, but I have 2 bills being heard this week, and so I decided to put my bill in pink and the bad ones in yellow.
That's
So
nice.
so I wouldn't forget it, I guess. But yeah, a lot of problematic bills. I just wanted to give, if we can, with your permission, Ida, I wanted to just before we wrap up, I feel like
Permission granted.
I was saying you're like my chairwoman. May I approach the well? I wanted to just real quick, just mention the bills that we are.
Your
gonna be
brain
hearing.
is so broken, I just have to say. But
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's almost 11 o'clock. This is what you get when we're filming a podcast at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
One quick drama, by the way, that happened to me today, if I may, a bill drama situation. So one of the bills on special order calendar is House Bill 399, which is
This is tea right here.
this is some serious like political nerdy tea, and it's kind of hard to explain, so we'll do our best. But long story short, got the special order calendar last week, and there's this big issue that's impacted every municipality in the state of Florida under the banner of Senate Bill 180. Senate Bill 180 is a bill that passed last legislative session. It was branded and it was understood to be an emergency management bill that also had language about repairing post-hurricane to make it easier for communities impacted by hurricanes to rebuild. And what really no one caught was that it had preemptive language that developers have taken advantage of to basically eliminate comprehensive plans across the state of Florida. So Orange County's, for example, Vision 2050 has been stalled in implementation because of Senate Bill 180. There has been an effort to their credit, the sponsor of this bill in the Senate to fix what he did. So Senate Bill 840 is the fixer to Senate Bill 180. Unfortunately, the House has had no hearings on this bill. And I basically took it upon myself to try to correct this. And so I took Senate Bill 180.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. So knowing that it wasn't filed in the House, I took Senate Bill 840 and I asked bill drafting to draft amendment with it to add on to this other bill, House Bill 399, which is called Land Use and Development Regulations. Basically, if you have a bill that has a broad title, then you can try to amend other similar topics to it. So I was like, okay, I'm good to go. I filed it. I talked to bill sponsor. I had no delusions was going to pass, but I really felt like it was important, and I still feel this way, to have the conversation, force the vote on fixing Senate Bill 180. And this is the cleanest way to do it. So everything's fine. I get to the Capitol, this morning, and I get a notice from a friend that for some reason, okay, this bill that has never, ever, one, not filed in the House, I never had a hearing in the House, has been referenced to the State Affairs Committee in the House.
Which is also done meeting. Like you don't have a meeting.
Exactly. We had our last meeting last week, and now again, crazier things have happened where we meet again.
Nothing's over till it's over.
Right. But it's just highly unlikely that State Affairs is meeting. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, something's really weird. Like, we're not meeting. Why would leadership reference a Senate bill into a House committee? And then it dawned on me. Immediately just dawned on me. I was like, oh my God, this is literally about my amendment. Because again, we talked about House rules earlier. So House rules say that you cannot file an amendment that has the same substance of a bill that never got a hearing.
So they basically introduced the bill today in the chamber to undermine your amendment. Why would they do that? Like, why?
Week 8 of legislative session, and this bill gets referenced to one of my committees, never will be heard, to block my amendment presentation. And I can only assume, to answer your question, that the reason why is that they don't want to vote on this because they know how bad voting no on this fix would be. And so they've just tried to basically prevent my ability to present this bill to prove the point. And by the way, someone on Instagram asked me, why does this keep happening to Democrats? She was like, it was a good question, but she was like, how come Republicans, keep doing these technicalities and Democrats don't do it? To be clear, that's what I was doing.
Right.
I was being clever, and I was using the rules in my favor, and I was following the procedure, following the timelines to say, I'm going to grab this Senate bill and put it onto a House bill and make you vote on it. And it's Republicans that change the rules, who do this like sneaky stuff, this diabolical stuff to basically serve a special interest, by the way, because this is all about large developers that don't want comprehensive plans. And so they're catering towards that interest to block a vote on this amendment. Needless to say, I am not done. I have other vehicles and ideas and concepts. And as soon as we log off, I'll be drafting more amendments late into the night. But I'm just like, it was wild. You've been here for 8 years. You're kind of like, oh, I've seen it all. But then that happens. You're like, okay, no, I guess I haven't. But I will admit, I also found like another kind of petty loophole with amendments. So
stay tuned.
Well, okay, yeah, fine. Stay tuned. I won't have to tell you.
You can dish it out now, but I kind of like the cliffhanger personally.
Yeah, we'll do a cliffhanger. Here's like the preview I'll give you though. The rules are decided by the majority party because they have 2/3, so they can decide whatever the rules they want to do. But the rules are also, which I think is even worse, are interpreted by the majority party. And so if we disagree on the interpretation of a rule, there's like no way I can win. And this has happened many times because they will roll amendments that I file out of order. And I'll have to, push back and say, how is it out of order? Like, it's relevant to the bill, does not extend the scope, blah, blah, blah. So anyways, I came up with a amendment idea that can be used with almost any bill to get a point across that does not expand the scope of the bill.
Okay.
So we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, by the time this posts, I'm not entirely sure if these
it's filed. It's filed.
All right. So we will report back. I will say, watching y'all fight until the dead of night, the minority, asking questions, putting amendments forward, doing the work, because I think a lot of people would say, also, why bother? Like, that amendment's not going to pass, or like, and I am just so proud of the fight y'all put on. And you make everyone miserable for it too, because like a lot of these people want to go home. Like they just want to clock out, go back home. They don't want to be on the floor. And a lot of them leave. They're not even on the floor, like while you're fighting. But that is why an opposition party exists. And it is so essential on every single fight to fight to the bitter end and to never comply, never let them get away with it. And so, Sissy, you file your amendments, you do your hand-to-hand amendment combat. Like it is a necessary thing. It is why an opposition exists. And so I'm just so proud to see y'all fight that good fight. And I know it's exhausting. And I know that it's almost 11 and you still got to get back to work. But just know that it does matter. It does make a difference.
Yeah.
And we cannot go down without a fight. So thank you for fighting.
Well, I appreciate that. And one reason why we have to fight too is because like the special order calendar also includes the amount of time we have to ask questions on bills on the House floor.
Right.
And I mean, some of the most controversial bills this session, including House Bill 1471, Systems of Law and Terrorist Organizations, which is the legislation that criminalizes dissent and allows the state to label organizations as terrorists, alongside a omnibus higher education bill that has anti-immigrant language in it, the Medicaid work requirements legislation. They're giving these bills, this is the Rules Committee that signs the times, 5 minutes in questions.
That's unreal.
300 seconds to ask all the questions. I mean, I have so many questions about 1471, which is the so-called domestic terrorist bill.
And asking questions matter because it helps set legislative intent. So when there's ambiguity in the bill, asking questions on the record from the sponsor is really important for the sponsor to say what their intent was. That can help in court and things like that. So it's really important.
They know that, right?
Exactly.
The majority party knows that. They know that we're asking questions that are designed for a legal fight, and they'd rather we just not do that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Well, and those rules were in a response to the minority party being really effective in asking a lot of questions and filing a lot of amendments. I remember in 2019 when Jose Javier Rodriguez on the anti-immigration bill had a total, I think we had a total of 200 plus amendments on that bill between both chambers. And that sort of delay, disrupt, destroy tactic of just trying to waste as much time as possible, because when session has to end by a certain day, sometimes time is the greatest tool you have. And so every minute you have, you got to use. So thank you for your service.
Well, we keep going, right? I have learned a lot in these 8 years that will serve me well in different capacities. I've also learned things that will be completely irrelevant to other parts of my life. But either way, we're always learning.
And on those beautiful,
on that note,
poetic notes, we want to thank everyone for being on this wild ride. And we want to thank everyone for checking in on us with our family in Iran. We're holding everyone in Iran in our hearts and all of our service members. And we're just hoping and dreaming of a world free from war, and where everyone has self-determination and the freedom to live in dignity and prosperity. And with that, we want to thank you all for tuning into Twinning. And Anna, just love you to pieces and sending you all the strength up there in Tallahassee. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Love you too.
It's my best dream or everyone's worst nightmare.